Stop trying to replicate Silicon Valley and start owning it.
Where do you really see the actual value creation?
In 2019, you couldn't get anything done with the government electronically. I thought it would be best to invest in these companies rather than just sit here and push boxes for them.
Are you seeing any shifts globally now that we might be underestimating here in the region?
Kuwaitis have always been ahead of the game. So I'm not worried about the GCC. I'm worried about like Europe. Where are they in the game?
You mentioned AI. How much do you think is just hype that's, exceeding reality?
My father was a serious innovator, was ahead of the game. He saw all this coming like decades ago. Large language models are definitely game changers in terms of knowledge management.
Is there anything that we tell ourselves about the Kuwaiti tech space that is not true?
It's not really a point of view of what does this person think or that person think. It's numbers. And the numbers don't lie.
There's an envelope on the table. Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in. This is Cristina. Welcome to a new episode of The Middle Ground, a space where we analyze the business landscape of Kuwait and of the wider region through the eyes of the people shaping it. As usual, I would like to start this episode by thanking our partners at Studio 8 for having us. Thank you so much for your support. Technology today is no longer confined to a single sector. It influences how businesses operate, how governments evolve, how capital gets moved, but eventually how decisions are made at every single level. And it is in markets specifically like ours, where these discussions go beyond infrastructure or digital tools, moving more towards transformation, competitiveness, and long-term direction. Joining me today for this discussion is somebody who has seen this evolution from multiple angles, through innovation, investment, entrepreneurship, by having global exposure to innovation ecosystems, but also by being actively engaged in discussions that shape the future of technology in the region. Fahad AlSharekh is an innovator, an entrepreneur, an investor, and a prominent voice in Kuwait's technology and ICT landscape. Fahad, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to start today's discussion by going back to the beginning. And I'm not talking about the beginning of your career specifically, more about the beginning of this sector, about where it all started. Because I know you've been exposed to the ICT sector from a young age. And I'm curious to know how it used to look back then.
Well, Kuwait specifically has been active in adopting IT since the early 80s. As a matter of fact, IBM had a center here in Kuwait with Kisser as early as the 80s. It was the only one in the region. It just explains how early technology was being adopted on a thinking level, at least in the think tanks like Kisser. I remember when I was very young, when Apple came up with the Apple II, which was the PC of what started the PC movement, let's say.
Yes.
KOC and Ahmedi had an Apple IIe lab, and that was the first time I ever experienced a computer.
Okay.
And this is before my father created Sakhar or launched Sakhar. So this was pre-Windows, pre-DOS, it was really just the Apple II. And that was also in Kuwait. So Kuwait had both IBM and Apple set up labs and shops as early as the very, very early 80s.
Mm-hmm. Were you involved in the landscape at the time in any way?
I was 6, maybe. So,
okay, so there was...
I wasn't really involved.
Okay. But at what point did it go from something you were passionate about or you were interested about into something that you actually started pursuing?
Well, it sort of was the family business like everyone else, really just I had the option of either enjoying the family business and choosing to continue in some sort of vertical that's related to the business, or at least the foundation. And I'm one of my siblings that decided to do that. And we started the family business basically was in the distribution of electronics, and it started.
Can you also name it? I want everybody who maybe is not familiar with it to know exactly what we're talking about.
Sure. So I think in the 60s, my father started a company called Al Alamiya Electronics.
Okay.
And Al Alamiya means international, but the name is Al Alamiya. And that became the brand. And it started with distribution of electronics. He saw the electronics as the future. This is the 60s. And so electronics was simply in the beginning, like TVs. People needed the TV, right? So everyone watches a TV. We're talking about the era before the TV.
Exactly.
And then when the TV came, and whoever was the TV agent, took a lot of market share. And my father saw that early, and he went into a sector where the more established, traditional, let's say, distribution or agent families, the ones that distribute the cars and sort of had a strong grip on certain agencies, and they didn't see that coming. And so he kind of looked at things where there was a clear void and a clear potential. We did that, and then that's moved on into other electronics and started with the office equipment machines like photocopiers and fax machines or telex machines back then. And then early computers. And then we decided that it was time to build an Arabic computer. And that's when the Sakhar project launched in 82.
Okay. I think it's interesting. You mentioned the family business. And because I'm sure that you were around your father a lot and you got to hear a lot of the things that were discussed back then, looking at the sector at large, how were the discussions different back then? What were people focusing on at the time?
Well, back then, I think the whole region was just considered a distribution center. This is a place where you can move boxes, basically, and just make your margin and maybe some, after-sales support, maintenance contracts, maybe. But it wasn't really looked at anything but that. Mm-hmm. And it was small, right? It was a nascent part of the world.
Yes.
All of it, Kuwait, Saudi, put them together. This is in the 80s, in the 70s. And then there was population explosion. Mm-hmm. And now I think the GCC is just 45 million people, which, puts it up there as one of the biggest countries in Europe or the biggest states in the US with a high disposable income and low taxes. So it makes it one of the most sought after places for the business development. But back then, to answer your question, people were much simpler. It was easier conversation. You just became an agent. You signed an agency agreement, mostly exclusive. And then you were in charge of marketing, sales, and distribution. And maybe, as I said, support, like maybe workshops and whatever. But it was a much simpler conversation. I remember people would just go to international fairs like CeBIT in Hanover, Germany, or CES in Las Vegas, which is a computer electronics show.
Yes.
And a consumer electronics show, sorry. And it's still one of the biggest. And still a lot of launches are done there. In the region, I think here there's GITEX in Dubai was the thing back then. And a lot of the tech companies and electronics companies would demonstrate their products there. And if they were new, they would find their match in every local business market. And so you would just go and sign an agency and take it over and bring it here. And then if it picks up and it gets network effect and people like it, then you make a lot of money. And if it doesn't, then you're stuck with stock.
Yes, physical stock.
Stock that things you don't, or maybe sometimes you can re-export to other markets. But that was how simple it was back then.
I agree with that because I know even to this day, trading itself, it's an important part of Kuwait's economy. And because back then the focus was more on trading, I want to ask you, when you think about how the ICT sector operates, what would you say are the main differences between back then? The focus back then was on trading. What do you see is the focus today? How do you feel it evolved?
Yeah, so back then, as I said, people were looking at this. It's a very good point, by the way. It was an extension of the trading sense of the merchant, mm-hmm. where if you look at hundreds of years ago, the Kuwaitis and some of the other Gulf states, including Bahrain and were major traders. It was called, merchant marine. And what they did is there were seafarers that went from Karachi to the east, Africa, maybe Zanzibar, and all the way up to Basra in Iraq. And that route sort of connected the whole world with Africa, India, and the Gulf.
Yes.
And Arabia. And India back then was the British East India Company was one of the largest conglomerates in the world.
Yes.
So it's bigger than like what companies are today in terms of a global footprint. And Karachi was one of the main hubs, and Kuwait was very much connected to that. And so our family's always been into merchant marines. I mean, my grandfather and great-grandfather both were traders.
Yes.
And we had offices in Basra and Karachi and Kuwait. And we had telegraph and telegrams. And I still have a lot of these documents. So it's in our nature to be traders. But as I said, in the 80s was, I think, the end of the agency era, and now more as a solution provider. And that's when I saw the flip, when it became more software based. And like Microsoft came in the game, and Oracle and all those big companies. You needed support. You needed technical people that knew much more on a software level to support post-sale activities and build and integrate and do all kinds of technical support. So it became the local partner had to become much, much more advanced and intelligent, and in order to provide the support level needed. And the good old days basically is no longer. You're just being a simple trader. You buy something and sell it, or you become an agent and distribute. Those were done, and now you need a much more sophisticated apparatus.
Yes, I was actually going to ask you, somehow summarizing all of this, if you feel that what's happening today is a continuation of what started back then, or if you feel that today we're in a completely different phase.
Well, a lot of things changed, even on the global world trade level. I mean, the WTO kind of canceled agents, and Kuwait, and one of the few places that still operates on exclusive agreements. When you go anywhere in the world, there's distributors and solution providers that give you some sort of protection.
Yes.
But otherwise, the whole notion of being an agent doesn't exist.
Yes.
Now it's all, there was a World Trade Organization, WTO, signed an agreement that said that doesn't make sense anymore, because it requires much more than that, and it doesn't lock people in. I mean, it protects the local agent because they put a lot of effort in building the brand and supporting it, and all the showrooms and the money they invested in building it. So yes, they need exclusivity. It only sounds fair. Those are the good ones. But some of the bad ones, and I remember out of experience, we'd go to these shows and they would just go because of their big name. And you have these low-level salespeople basically go there, collect, show them a deck or a presentation. This is who we are. This is who our boss is. Our boss is connected to this guy, and our boss's cousin is the minister, and all kinds of things, and take all these good products and basically lock them in, either to prohibit competition,
okay,
or because they're just sloppy and lousy and complacent and just want to sit on it until they feel like it. And so that was for the bad people, let's say the bad agents.
yes,
That helped some of the big companies, some of the smaller companies get into the market. And today, the game is much more sophisticated, with computers getting into everything, and now AI getting into everything. You really, you can't just bet on old trading techniques.
yes.
You have to be a much more sophisticated added value partner. And I think that's what changed.
So would you say it's a continuation, or is it something completely different?
No, the game changed for sure. I mean, look at all the big trading families in Kuwait. They've all yes, some of the core businesses are still there, but none of the, there isn't a family that just sells cars.
Yes, true.
You know what I mean? Or there's a family that just, distributes milk or milk products or has a milk factory. They changed.
Yes.
And everyone's much more diversified. But besides that, I'll take ourselves for an example.
Yes.
When I was looking at, as I was getting older and, finished high school, getting into college and still meeting with the people from those big corporates like Dell and Intel and Microsoft and other similar companies, I was now in business school and I was looking at their stocks and their share price, and their share prices were going much higher than any money we made out of distribution or margins. And so I thought it would be best to invest in these companies now that we know and we have access, rather than just sit here and push boxes for them. And everyone makes money and I make little margins because, when you order the product,
Yes.
you need a banking note or some sort of LC or something to do that. So the bank starts making money even before you get the product.
Yes.
And then the salespeople make money. The person who sold that to you from that company, he made his target, he made his quota.
Exactly.
And then you sell it to some, you get some contract and you sell like 1,000 TVs to X entity. And then you wait 18 months to collect. The bank is charging you money.
Yes.
And then by the time everything is done and you do the tally, you make the least amount of money is the agent.
Exactly.
Even your salespeople make more money, in terms of economies of scale. I mean, like how much they make on their effort versus what you make. And so I thought it was ridiculous, to make money that way. And I wanted to expand into other things.
Especially if you have the capabilities.
Especially if you have the access, the know-how, the judgment,
Exactly.
and the realization that you need to change before you have to. And that's why a lot of complacent people that just sat there being happy, they lost their agencies. How many big families lost their car dealership to another family? In
Okay.
Kuwait, particular.
Okay.
Big names now are like this generation, doesn't know them. And like in the 80s, every billboard in the highway was their name because they were sleeping on the wheel and being too complacent. The others who actually reinvent themselves continuously, they become, of course, more present and more influential in any sort of business environment because they know that they need to readapt and reinvent themselves.
I love this angle, and I will get back to it for sure later.
Sure.
But you mentioned something, and I want us to capitalize on that a bit. You did mention that now in today's environment, technology is the backbone of everything, right? And we know that has transformed a lot every single industry. And I want us to talk about that, specifically looking at the market we're in at Kuwait. Where are we in Kuwait right now? When you look at the entire landscape, let's say.
Well, I'm gonna just look at my personal life and how I deal and interact with my day-to-day life. Let's say I'm gonna go back to pre-COVID. So let's say in 2019, you couldn't get anything done with the government electronically, and today I do about 80% of my life is on Sahel or on my Kuwait ID app.
Exactly.
That digital transformation is super impressive considering it's been like 5 or 6 years since they decided to do that. And I am very happy to see how advanced things have become. And it's just, just for transparency and fighting corruption and fighting all sorts of leakage and wastage that used to happen that made bureaucracy horrible. And
this is actually, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. This is actually great. And I do want to share this with everybody who's watching. Kuwait does have an amazing system, not only one application, but multiple applications. It became as simple as renewing your driver's license in 5 minutes online. I mean, you do it from your comfort of your house in your pocket. I mean, this is, as you said, it's really phenomenal.
It is, and it's catching up to some of our neighbors too. It's not like it's a big leap. But
Has Kuwait been the first country?
No, I think I don't know if it's definitely not the first. I
Okay.
mean, the UAE and Dubai, definitely Dubai e-government has been around for 20 years.
Okay.
And Dubai went from e-gov to smart gov and now AI gov.
Okay.
And so they have an AI minister. An actual minister who does AI, not an AI minister like Albania or something. And that person's job is to incorporate AI in everything the government does to become more expeditious and more capital efficient and serve the people's needs, quicker. I think what Kuwait did is realize that we need to automate and move into an electronic environment, and they did that very successfully. And I witnessed the digital transformation in the government as one of the most important leaps forward. That's on that sense. On another sense, both Google and Microsoft and have now are moving the government into a cloud infrastructure.
Yes.
And that will help Kuwait first of all, move the government to the cloud, so that whenever there's anything strange happening, like an abrupt attack from a neighboring country that's sudden and unjustified, and instead of finding yourself trapped, you're still continuing. And Kuwait didn't stop for a second with all the barrage that we got from missiles, ballistics, and cruise, and drones, and sleeper cells, and all kinds of things that were let's say disruption, that caused disruption, that could have caused severe disruption, but didn't.
Yes.
And I really appreciate how far the government has gone to do that. And I think a lot of it is because of the electronic nature of operations, and especially, the government itself didn't pause. Like, I give an example of the Public Institute for Public Institute for Social Security.
Okay.
And it's basically the pension fund.
Yes.
And it's Social Security. It's like 400 meters from my house.
Okay.
The building. And a drone struck it in the early days of the drone attacks, and the whole building was set on fire.
Yes, I remember.
And I have friends and family that work there, and I'm familiar with the IT department because we used to work with them back in the days when I was in the government and family business. And lastly, I myself, I'm insured by them, and I watched the building go in flames, and then they put the fire out quickly, and then the next day they distributed the retirees allowance, or monthly allowance, or whatever it's called.
Okay.
Well, I don't think anything gave me more faith and more encouragement in the fact that this is, you see the building get on fire, hit by a drone, and the operation still continues thanks to their digital infrastructure and thanks to their systems that have been in place. Their IT room was fireproof, so the fire didn't affect it. The servers were operating throughout the drone attacks and the fire. And then the next day, they all could patch into the network and operated remotely. And that's just a live example of what you can do when you have a solid electronic infrastructure and e-government and the digital backbone. And so that was really a testament to the importance of having such infrastructure.
Who do you think has been driving most of this technological development in Kuwait? Do you think it was more the public sector or the private sector?
Well, the private sector has always been the earliest adopter and mover, always. And specifically in Kuwait, let's say the banking sector, right? The banking sector has always been the first to move into anything. And even Kuwait was one of the first GCC countries to introduce a credit card, to introduce ATM machines, to introduce online banking. And, that is an indication, right, of what happens, not just in the Kuwaiti government, in the GCC itself.
Yes.
And GCC is also one of the first adopters in the world.
Yes.
Like one of the first regions in the world to have 5G is here. And so any developers that wanted to develop something and test out 5G, they were better off moving to the GCC and doing it here. And so, yes, the private sector is usually the first to adopt, and then the government sector will take its time to move. And of course, the biggest problem always is regulation. Okay. And the regulation is always very much delayed. And once they realize what's going on, it takes time because of the nature of bureaucracy. And today Kuwait things are happening at a much faster pace than before.
I was going to say that I think in Kuwait the beautiful part is that although decisions take time, once somebody makes up their mind, change is, Godspeed. It happens overnight. I remember in COVID when we had one of the most massive digital transformations, and in 6 months we had all the apps, all of the checks, everything was, I've never seen something happening so fast at a government level. But you mentioned something that I do want to emphasize on. You keep talking about the digital transformations, and we're talking pockets, right? The banking sector, this part. Do you feel now that we're still operating in pockets, or do you think we're closer to actually building an ecosystem?
Look, the Sahel app, right, has like 30 different government entities, and each one has, at least one or two things you can do. Some of them have 20 and plus. So that's an indication that it's larger. It's a larger footprint of who is getting, and this is the beginning, right? They want to do more. And I think it's on a prime ministerial level. Like I think His Highness the Prime Minister, especially Sheikh Ahmed Al Abdallah, the current Prime Minister, he has been adamant from day one of taking over the new role as a PM to automate. And he's always been pressing. And I think his background as a banker, as a chairman of banks, as a minister of telecommunication, His Highness is quite aware of the importance of digital transformation because he saw the impact on the bank. And so we're very happy that he brought that knowledge with him and has been pushing that with great ministers that, have been pushing their teams to do that. And I see it internally. And it's just is so much more productive. I mean, think about all the things you're prohibiting just by becoming totally digitized, right? The transparency. Before, some people who are corrupt used to hide information, and you need to bribe your way into getting your information.
Exactly.
And some people who are corrupt will destroy information that can implicate them in doing something unlawful. Now that's all gone. And
now we're kind of tracing everything, right?
You can't, everything is out there. And so that clears up. And then all these unnecessary people that are just, you walk into a government entity, this guy gives you a stamp, and then you go to the other guy, and the other guy puts the stamp. And then you go to a third guy that actually now has a rubber stamp. Okay. And you're just looking at these people and like, how is this efficient and why are they here?
Yes.
I'm not talking from a xenophobic perspective. But I'm talking about like an efficiency perspective. Like, how inefficient is this? And isn't this guy has a, something on that says he's the cleaning company, but somehow he's running around with papers from one department to another. It was awful.
Yes.
And you can sense the lack of efficiency and this unregulated way of doing things, which were archaic because it's like 1960s and 1970s rules, and with makeshift adjustments for new tech advancements. It was chaos, and the chaos produced indirect corruption, or what they call administrative corruption, which is not necessarily someone stealing and putting in his pocket, but like people just don't produce on time, don't show up, are slacking at work.
Yes.
And I think digital transformation eradicated all of that.
Yes. Well, I want to continue focusing on the innovation side, because we've been talking about technology from an infrastructure perspective, but now we hear talks about innovation, and I want to focus in Kuwait specifically. Is there anything preventing us from making the step from infrastructure to innovation? And if that's the case, what do you think is actually preventing that? Is it mindset? Is it talent? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I just said earlier that Kuwaitis have been early adopters of technology always. And, 5G was released in the GCC before other places. And so some of the technologies are here first. And because of disposable income, because of lack of taxes, people can afford to get the latest laptop and the latest server and the latest. So things are happening. Now, innovation itself requires a complete different ecosystem. It requires if you talk about innovation in terms of scientific discovery and computer science and writing new code and developing new technologies and creating the next AI model or an AI lab, that requires hundreds of years of academic infrastructure that doesn't exist.
I'm going to make a bracket. I'm asking specifically thinking about the countries around us.
Yeah.
And as you said, for example, with the digital infrastructure at a country level, that in UAE, it was available around 20 years ago. We adopted it in more recent times. And I'm thinking they are now at a level that's far ahead of us. And knowing that Kuwait has been one of the first countries in many aspects, not only technology, but now we're focusing on technology. That's why I'm asking you, where do you think is the gap? Why is Kuwait not the first one to innovate?
Yeah, I don't think there's innovation. I think innovation is, I think that's adoption. Okay. And adoption is not innovation. They're adopting technologies earlier than we are because of regulation. I think UAE is the quickest in producing updated regulation. And I think there was a lot of issues in the way Kuwait used to regulate. And the regulatory body was called the National Assembly, the parliament.
Okay.
And that got into this like black hole of quicksand, let's say, that nothing was produced. And they're the body, the regulatory legislative branch that was supposed to do that. But now that they removed them, the executive branch, the government, has been, fast tracking everything. And this giant leaps we've seen in adopting technology now put us at par with our neighbors. That's in terms of adopting technologies and having it done in a very regulated way. I think Saudi Arabia also used data and data analysis and data science to figure out what they want, and they put their vision.
Yes.
And they went ahead, and I think many of their ideas have been achieved. And then you learn as you go. And Silicon Valley has a famous line that says, in innovation, you move fast and you break things.
Okay.
Okay, so when you move fast, you will break things.
Okay.
So you don't worry about what you broke, worry about what you built.
Yes.
It's like a football game. When you don't count how many scores you missed.
Yes.
You scored. Did you win the cup? Yes. How many goals? 3. But you missed 20 and you got a yellow card. Who cares? Did I win the cup?
I love this mindset.
Yeah, that's how it is in innovation.
Yes.
And because people that are risk averse and scared and don't want to make mistakes, and usually that's the mindset of a government employee because he wants to get the promotion. And the only way to make sure that he gets the promotion or she gets the promotion is to make sure she or he doesn't make a mistake.
Yes.
And so the only way to make sure you do nothing wrong is if you do nothing. And so they just sit down and do nothing and expect, and that's sort of the welfare state.
Yes.
And that doesn't work. And so now with KPIs, which they put in Saudi Arabia, for example, and the UAE, there's a KPI even in government employees.
Okay.
And KPI is key performance indicator.
Yeah.
And so you can measure targets, deliverables, output, and people mistake activity and busy work for output, but it's not. It's really not. Otherwise, the ants will have built skyscrapers, but they don't because they just, do the same thing over and over again. That's why they're ants.
Yes.
And they're very active and very energetic and wake up every day and they just work. Have you ever seen an ant sleep? They're working all the time.
Exactly.
And but their productivity is 0 because they're busy work. And that's not the point. The point is productive, smart work.
Yes.
And so I think tools like AI help us become more productive in a smart way. And back to innovation. Innovation is developing breakthrough technology that's game-changing, that's disrupting, that's disintermediating established businesses. So you go in and you change the course. And that requires innovation. Innovation means you build something new. You come up with something completely new. Like the Arabic GPT. GPT is produced. So when GPT came out, American competitors came out like Anthropic. And then a Chinese one came out called DeepSeek.
Okay.
And then the French tried with Mistral and the Canadians tried with Cohere, but eventually they couldn't catch up to OpenAI and Anthropic and the Chinese. Where's the Arabic one? Even the UAE. Where is it? Right? And so that's innovation. It doesn't exist.
Yes.
They have an attempt. We read about Falcon this, Jace that, whatever, and Saudi Arabia, Humane, they launched Alam. Great. development, but to get to that level, you need much, much, much more. And I think what's needed is not capital. Capital is abundant.
Yes.
Infrastructure is abundant. You can build AI centers, you can put GPUs, you can afford to build that. And I go back to my point of academia. You need established schools that have produced hundreds of thousands of computer scientists and engineers who have built tens of successful companies that went public. And those leaders are now mentoring other people based on their experience. And that's what an ecosystem is.
Yes.
Ecosystem is not putting electricity in a building, building a nice building, giving it high electricity and saying, here's some money. That's not how it works. That's why San Francisco is still the largest ecosystem.
Yes.
Not like Texas and not other places where there's a lot of money. Even Boston that has Harvard and MIT and it still struggles to compete with San Francisco. And if you look at San Francisco, if you look at the top 10 cities in the world in terms of innovation,
Okay.
5 of them are around San Francisco.
Okay.
Okay, there's Menlo Park, Cupertino, Palo Alto, Santa Clara, and San Francisco downtown.
We're
Okay?
learning some new things.
That's
Okay.
all called the Greater Bay Area.
Okay.
And if you look at the numbers, it's like San Francisco and then Palo Alto and then New York and then Cupertino and then Boston and then Mountain View. And you see, so in the top 10, and that's because it's established hundreds of years ago. When California opened up, there was in San Francisco specifically, University of Berkeley, one of the top schools in the world, Stanford, the #1 technical school in the world, Caltech, and then you have other schools all there feeding into this ecosystem, hundreds of thousands of graduates every year, which encouraged companies to establish bases there. So Cisco is there, Facebook is there, Google is there, Twitter is there, OpenAI is there. And so all these people get hired and then they leave and they start small companies. And that's why all the venture capitalists move there. So you have Kleiner Perkins there and all the big names
Yes.
like Benchmark, Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, all those big VCs who started all these companies are there too. All of those together is the ecosystem.
Yes.
None of that exists here. None of it. And so my advice always to the government bodies where I advise, either formally or informally, is stop trying to replicate Silicon Valley and start owning it.
Yes.
You are blessed with hydrocarbon, supply that is giving you lots of wealth. And you invest that wealth smartly. Like Kuwait is one of the best investors in history.
Exactly.
The
Yes.
KIA is unparalleled. It's over 70 years old. It's very conservative, very focused. It's bottom line driven. And it's done very well. And my generation survived because of the 1990 war in Kuwait. The KIA had the money to pay everyone to come help get the invaders out and then put all the fires and rebuild and reconstruct.
Exactly.
And we came back like the phoenix. And so because of that sound investment theory. So if you look at it, Kuwait exports oil,
Yes.
and we export cash.
Yes.
And so these are the two exports. So how do we use the cash exports to own all the tech? And our innovation is how to own innovation, not how to rebuild it. And especially we don't have economies of scale. We're very small. Like, what are you going to build in Kuwait? You can build adjacent services, like build, like what they're doing in the UAE and Saudi, building gigawatts, like real GPU centers, renewable energy to support communication hubs connecting the world, strategic location of the GCC, investing early in Starlink, so that we connect the world. I think that is smarter than trying to compete with China and America.
For sure. And I think it's great that you mentioned infrastructure and the fact that Kuwait doesn't lack anything. I jot down some ideas to help make the conversation more specific. And according to recent market estimates, Kuwait's ICT market is projected to grow from roughly $20 billion today to more than $34 billion by 2031. And I want to ask you, when you look at all of this growth, because it's massive, where do you really see the actual value creation?
I think there's a lot of space for automation. I think we're in the beginning here.
Okay.
Getting a smart app is 10 years old. We should be, light years ahead.
Yes.
And I think going from 20 to 30 something, it's a nice 50% jump or whatever it is. It's good. It's about time.
Yes.
And how many things are still done in an analog way or a traditional way in your day-to-day things? That all should be automated. And, and then education needs to get automated. Health needs to get automated. It's a lot of things are still not there. And I think we're on the right track for sure. And I even think it's going to be environmental, better for Kuwait. And lastly, I think we have too many small, let's say, low-skilled jobs that are unnecessary. And I think technology will solve that and will help with making Kuwait cleaner and safer.
Yes. It just reminded me, recently I had a discussion with somebody and we were talking about the tendering process in Kuwait, especially tenders coming from the government sector. And they were saying that unfortunately, you can't do it just digitally. There's still a lot of rules they have to respect. And they said, sometimes a single dot with a pen in the wrong place can get you disqualified. So
right. And that just sounds so primitive, right? It sounds pathetic. And that is true. And some of these processes are so old. And think about it. So like the Central Tendering Committee, I think when was that set up, right? In the 70s or 80s? And by people probably in their 50s and 60s back then, right? So people born in the 30s and 20s were deciding how things should be tendered in 2025.
Yes.
So it's 100 years after they've been born.
Yes.
They still have influence on how things are done.
Yes.
Which just sounds so pathetic. And it delays progress. And it's dispiriting sometimes when you see these, as you said, I've been through those, when that dot or a paper, and then you have the Central Tendering Committee, and then you have the General Audit Bureau, and then you have some experts committee that gives you all these things are done in such an old school red tape, as they say, bureaucratic way.
Yes.
To discourage people from innovating.
Yes.
And being, more advanced. And eventually people will get sick of it. A lot of the Kuwaiti merchants, expanded their markets outside of Kuwait. I mean, if you look at the top 3 families in Kuwait and look how much they're making money in Kuwait.
Can we name them?
I don't know. I can't. I don't want to name. Okay, let's take, for example.
I can name one that I know of.
Who?
Al-Ghanim?
Well, there's several Al-Ghanims. I'm talking about, let's say, AlSharekh, for example.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
AlSharekh and Mabani, right? Mabani.
I'm going to make a bracket here. We're not trying to create any top of any sort. We're just trying to give more information to people who are maybe not familiar with the market. So
yeah, so like Al-Mabani, for example, started building malls in Kuwait, and now they have malls in 3 or 4 different countries.
Yes.
And so, and distribution of other things. Okay. And Zain, okay, they didn't just stay in the Kuwaiti market.
Yes.
And MBK didn't just stay in the Kuwaiti market.
Exactly.
Right. And us as a family business, we set up an office in Washington, D.C. and set up an office in every GCC state, selling our products.
Okay.
So eventually, when you hit the dark ceiling of, eventually, I just want to be careful how I say this. When you hit a dark ceiling of prohibitive, bureaucratic nonsense, right? Like you just said, like that draining, pathetic central tender committing process, which only exists in Kuwait, by the way. And if you look at what Doha built and Abu Dhabi built and Dubai built without a central tender committee,
yes,
you're like, look how great they are and look how lousy it is here. And I wonder who's right, who's wrong. And I wonder when the wrong side is going to correct. And rumors have it anyway that it's going to be canceled anyway. The Central Tender Committee. It's going to be changed back to a more efficient process. But anyway, that's a great point you raise, which is how can you automate something when you have archaic, obsolete, old laws put in place by dinosaurs who went extinct, and like, why are we suffering? Why are we being penalized by something so old and unnecessary?
True. And I think it's great that we're mentioning these things because hopefully we will see in the future of Kuwait more and more improvement. But tell me, is there anything that we tell ourselves about the Kuwaiti tech space that is not true?
I think in nature, Kuwaitis are entrepreneurs and they're smart and they're innovators and they're risk takers. It's just look, even the nature of who we are in merchant marines, right? You used to take a boat and don't know where you're going in terms of like, how is this, today we have all kinds of technology and you can't predict the storm.
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
Can you imagine 100 years ago when they would go and they'll take a boat and they'll put all their money in this boat collectively, and the boat will take an adventure in the sea. Maybe it comes back with pearls. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they all die.
Exactly.
Maybe they crash. And that's called venture capital, by the way, because you're taking the original venture capital is the Kuwaitis' pearl diver missions. And so
I love it.
It's true. Look at the nature of it. They took a huge risk. It's collective capital. You get paid carried interest later.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It really is the same model.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nothing different. I think the welfare state of the 60s and 70s and government jobs kind of like let a lot of people take it easy and enjoy the comfort of air conditioning and working 5 hours a day and getting money anyway. And then the parliament made it impossible to fire Kuwaitis. And so people just took it for granted and became extra complacent or lazy and lousy. But the entrepreneur, of course, Kuwaitis have always been ahead of the game. Till today, innovation. Look at the top tech companies. Talabat is the biggest company. It's founded by Kuwaitis.
Yes, of course.
If you look at
and unrivaled in the
today,
region.
I think the biggest e-commerce distribution, I think Flowered. It's a Kuwaiti company. Yes, it's Saudi now, but the founder is Kuwaiti, and it's operated with Kuwaiti, and the original VCs were Kuwaiti for sure.
Abdulaziz
is the operator, and he put a lot of money, but he was backed, I think, by Faith and other Kuwaiti VC. And so that's an example of what Kuwaitis can do.
Yes.
And, I like the team at Coded. They took it upon themselves to create an online and offline coding academy and educate people in coding. And they've trained many government entities outside of Kuwait, including Saudi and Qatar.
Yes.
And now they're working with large U.S. corporations to do their training for the government contracts they got here in Kuwait. So there's no problem. I think the Kuwaiti nature, it's in the nature of the Kuwaiti entrepreneur to be innovative and deploy technology and reinvent themselves.
Among all of this technological transformation, how much do you feel it's actually impacting the way businesses function? And how much do you feel it's still surface level?
I mean, look, the companies that moved into like the first companies to have a website, the first companies to have an Instagram account, the first to have an active email, and then to have an active WhatsApp channel, right? They do much better than others. The first thing you want to do is find, try to communicate. And the ones that made it easier using simple social networking tools, won. And so if you take that basic example and take it to the biggest companies, like the big distributors of food, something so simple like rice, the ones that automated their supply chain won. They became much bigger than the ones that didn't.
Yes.
And so the ones that have like robots now.
Okay.
I'm not talking about like robots like Terminator, but like, move
things
that move robotically and use robotics and
robotic arms and
just like supply chain movement and like the cars are all autonomous, and there are here in Kuwait a few centers that
I've
do
seen
that.
in Nexus last year. I've seen some exhibitors who had for warehousing capabilities. They had all sorts of robotic.
Exactly. So people that use the supply chain and warehousing, and they won. So it's a no-brainer. The technology is there to make you much more efficient.
Yes.
And efficiency goes down to the bottom line because cost effectiveness is how you make more money. And it shortens time and shortens costs, so you make more money quicker. And that's the whole point of capitalism. Unless you missed the memo on that, that's the whole point. And so, yeah.
I want us to travel a bit. You mentioned earlier San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and I'm thinking that you did have a great exposure to all of these ecosystems, if I'm not mistaken, also through the JEDI Fund. And I am curious to know more. And for everybody who is watching us to understand a bit better, I would like us to start with a brief description of the JEDI Fund, what it is, and what does it actually do?
So now I'm putting my venture capitalist hat on. Okay,
yes, please.
And so yeah, I've joined Camco, which is one of the largest asset managers in the region.
Yes,
and it wins awards from Forbes, etc., and Lipper Awards, etc., for being distinguished and being one of the larger and better managed asset managers. And I think it's 27 years old now. It's publicly traded and has large institutional investments, large institutional investors. And so that made it very, very attractive for me as a partner that wants to do something in the alternatives. And so basic investments. So if you invest your money in the stock market in what's called public equities,
yes.
If you put your money in fixed income,
Okay.
which is bonds, and if you just hold your money in cash or money market, that's all called investments.
Yes.
And then if anything else is called alternative. And so if you put your money in private placement, in private equity, in venture capital, in hedge funds, and also real estate is not, real estate its own, real estate is real estate. And then there's alternatives.
Yes.
Alternatives, it's called alternative because it's not as simple and basic. Because in the public market, you can go sell your stock and get liquidity the next day.
Yes.
Real estate, usually you invest in a building that gives you monthly income. So it's called revenue generating investments.
Okay.
With private equity, which is what venture capital is, because private equities, you're investing in something in a private company that doesn't have financials every quarter and whatever, and you're buying equity in that company. You're buying shares. So it's called private equity. And if it's in a late stage, the company is mature, like OpenAI and Anthropic, $1 trillion company, or even SpaceX.
Exactly.
Those are, private equity deals. If it's in a growing, starting in a small, and you don't know anything about the company, it's called growth private equity. That's called venture capital because you're taking an adventure and it's risky.
Yes.
But high risk, high reward.
I was going to say probably the rewards are
right, because if you invest in a
risks.
company early and it goes 1,000 times, then you make 1,000 times your money. You will never make 1,000 times your money on fixed income, ever. You'll make 4 or 5% a year, but it's fixed and you're guaranteed. So it's all about your risk appetite. Okay, so that's a kind of introduction to venture capital. I enjoy that very much because if we go back to our earlier discussion, when I was in college, I would see, the opportunities. What if we invested in Dell early? When Dell first came and met my father, I was like, please, take my computers to Aramco instead of IBM or something.
Yes.
So we're very important in securing that big contract for them. And then the stock shot. And so that's when I realized, we should be in this business. And that's why when I was finally in charge, I took Al Alamiya public in Kuwait 2006. I sold some of Sakhar's, let's say, legacy technologies and kept some of our more natural language processing and more, the ones that have patents
Core
are close to our heart and have a patent, which is, that's innovation. We kept those. But I focused.
Make a bracket, sorry. I'll let you finish. You mentioned innovation, and I want us to say this because maybe people don't know this. Your father's company did create innovation. Tell us what it was.
Well, we have several U.S. patents, and the United States Patent Trademark Office, USPTO. It's a government federal entity in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
that gives you a patent. And a patent basically means you have discovered, developed, invented something that has never been done before.
Yes.
And you've challenged a team of academic and legal experts by the federal government, and then they give you a US patent. And therefore, no one can replicate that for 20 years. We don't care about the replication part, we just cared about getting it done. So I think we have 4 US patents in optical character recognition, in Arabic speech recognition, and this is a bit complicated. It's called Arabic disambiguation system, which means thematic prediction, which means that you can write a sentence and then we'll understand what's going to come next. So, when you write something and it says, is this what you wanted to say?
Exactly.
Right. Well, we've done all that 25 years ago.
Amazing.
Right. And so all the patents were granted in 2003 and they take about 2 or 3 years. So all that is from our 90s R&D work. That's my father's work.
Yes.
And so my father was a serious innovator. He was ahead of the game. He saw all this coming like decades ago.
Yes.
And that's why he's one of one. And we are just business people. And we're like, okay, how to now? The fun part is how to monetize that, how to productize that, how to make money, and how to use everything we know to invest in other innovations early.
Yes.
And so between watching what happened in Sakhar's R&D and the fact there's no economies of scale here for those technologies to matter. So it's great you have sales in the tens of millions.
Yes.
But if you were in Silicon Valley, you'd be in the tens of billions and your company worth $1 trillion.
Yes.
And companies that were started at the same time we got started, now we're worth $1 trillion. And we're not. And so it's not anyone's fault except we're in the wrong part of the world because it's small. And so
we go back to the JEDI Fund.
And so I figured the best thing to do is to go to the Bay Area. Remember I said it was the highest production of technology, the highest number of AI companies, the highest number of computer science graduates, the highest number of tech companies, startups, and technical schools and venture capital firms. And that is, people are like, well, that's a big ocean and you're going to be a small fish. You'd rather stay here and be the big shark in a small pond. But the small pond is too small and you can't grow.
Yes.
But over there, you have to fight to be relevant and to understand. And that's when you understand it's an information game. Do you have the information? And number 2, yes, you do have the information. Now, do you have access to people that can get you in? And yes, you do have access. Do you have the right judgment to know which one to get into? So it's information, access, and judgment. And it's not easy because it takes 10 years to figure out whether you did it right or wrong. And the number one indicator of how well you've done is a metric called DPI, which is distribution per investment. How much money have you invested and how much have you distributed back? The net asset value and multiple of invested capital, that's great, but that's just saying, you're halfway through graduation in high school and you're in midterms and you say, I got A's, but you still didn't graduate. And so I don't care what's your scorecard. Did you graduate with the highest GPA possible and got a good job? That's how I look at investments. Did the investments do well? Did they go public? And did you distribute your money back? And so DPI is what matters. And so to link it all together, I always liked alternative space because I think that the high risk, high reward, I felt comfortable understanding the risks involved because I understood the information, because we naturally read a lot about tech because it's in our business. We automatically, go to all these events anyway because of our business. And so having that early exposure to R&D engineers and understanding how they think. And then being a distributor of Dell, Microsoft, and Intel and seeing how those companies became $1 trillion companies and we should have invested in them early. And so all that. And then, of course, having so in Kuwait, you can't just go set up a fund. The Capital Markets Authority and the regulators here require you to have certain criteria. And not just in Kuwait, in DIFC, in Abu Dhabi, in Saudi, the Central Market Authority or the DFSA in Dubai.
This is the market mechanism.
Yeah, the regulator. Everyone has it. Even the US has a SEC. they have rules. And I thought it would be best to align with an established powerhouse. And if they shared the same enthusiasm, and as I said, I was very lucky that they were just as excited. And, using their platform, which means they can set up funds, they can distribute, meaning they have wealth managers that can distribute the fund and raise money for the fund.
Yes.
They can do it in multiple locations because they're in Kuwait, they're in Saudi, they're in UAE, Dubai, and ADGM Abu Dhabi, DIFC in Dubai, and also in Bahrain. And we have small offices in London and Egypt. And so that's, that becomes a no-brainer. Like, who else are you going to work with? KFH, MBK, Camco. That's it. And the other two are not interested. And that's why they don't have a VC product. Okay. And they don't have an alternatives platform. But Camco does. And we successfully raised Fund 1, which was the JEDI. And it's a $45 million early stage VC fund focused on the geography of the Bay Area. We've done maybe 5% outside of the Bay Area, just, for FOMO's sake, in case, there's a great manager that just went and did a fund in Southeast Asia. We gave him like a little bit of money just to see the flow and build a discovery model. One in India, one in Southeast Asia. But pretty much everything else is in the Bay Area. And we deployed that 45 million via a network of emerging managers. And that's what the JEDI actually means. It means the Joint Emerging Manager Direct Investment Program. So first you invest in emerging managers, and then you see which company has breakout, which fund has breakout companies in the portfolio, and you double down on them. And therefore you have guaranteed knowledge of which company is growing. And that takes the judgment part out of, like, how do you know, which is great. Well, you see the data. Why? Because you're in the fund early and you'd mine the data and you track it and you build a tracker discovery program and you see. And that's how you sort of lower and mitigate the risk of making a mistake, and you sort of concentrate more on winners. And so far the numbers are great. And some of our emerging managers have distributed over 30% DPI. And for something that's less than 5 years old, I think that's very, very good indication. And, it's not really an opinion anymore. It's not really a point of view of what does this person think or that person think. It's numbers. And the numbers don't lie. And at the end of the day, there's a benchmark. This is the year you started. This is how many investments you've done. This is your IRR. This is your DPI. And whoever has the highest DPI and highest IRR is the best.
Exactly.
And whoever doesn't have DPI, I don't care what they have, is not so good. So that encourages us because we've established that, and we look forward now to doing our second fund.
Well, you mentioned earlier exposure. And I wanted to ask you, in relation also to the JEDI Fund, are you seeing any shifts globally now that we might be underestimating here in the region at the moment?
Look, I think, honestly, and I gave a whole keynote about the AI boom in the world. The number one country that is investing in AI is the US, and 80% or 90% of it is in Silicon Valley or San Francisco. Right after the US, it's China. And then everyone else is really lagging behind. The only region that has its own formula of what to do with AI is the GCC. Besides what the UAE and Saudi are doing in terms of attracting major AI labs to build, or AI scalers as they call them, to build their centers there, which is so important. They're also big investors. So the Kuwait Investment Authority is a large investor in OpenAI. The Qatari Investment Authority is a large investor in Perplexity, Anthropic. Saudi PIF is a large investor in Databricks, and so on. So the point I'm making here is, like, through investments, this is the best thing you can guarantee. At least you own it. And when you own something, you can use it quicker than someone that's completely oblivious.
Yes.
So I'm not worried about the GCC. I'm worried about like Europe. Where are they in the game? Where is their AI model? Where's the European Anthropic?
Okay.
Where's the European data center? Where is it? Where is the European comp to what UAE is building?
Don't think they've been much innovators anyways.
I think, again, that's a regulation thing.
Yes.
I think Europe is stuck in legacy regulation and is a victim of socialism still. And I think socialism destroyed Europe. And I think this sense of entitlement by the socialist workers to do nothing and have 3-day weekends and have like siesta breaks, and that's the opposite of the energy in Silicon Valley. And you don't need to be in Silicon Valley. You can play golf all day. No one forces you. But if you really want to innovate and be ahead of the game, you need to put the work, and you need to have the academic ecosystem and the whole ecosystem like in Silicon Valley. And that's why in Europe, besides being fragmented and being, they're just not on the same page. You can see from the Ukraine war and this whole nonsense now with Iran and NATO and this, different people say different things.
Yes.
It's a problem. It's a problem. Germany thinks it's a great country, right? Yeah, you built Mercedes-Benz and BMW and you have a lot of great companies like Siemens, whatever. Yeah, that was because of the 18th century and 19th century. But going forward, I don't see that happening where I see like small countries like UAE, like Singapore. Singapore provided a lot for chip manufacturing, what's called fabs, fabrication centers. And they've laid the best laws and regulation to make that happen. So everyone's in Singapore building.
Yes.
And you have little places like Taiwan, completely controlled the chip manufacturing business, right?
Yes.
And so where's Europe? And where's Canada?
It's an end user.
Yes, it's going to be an end user. And they have issues now, immigration, lawlessness. Like if you're in London or Paris walking in the street, right? And you can't think about innovation. You're thinking about, I don't want to be mugged. I don't want someone to steal my phone. I don't want someone to steal my backpack. I don't want someone to steal my laptop. Where can I sit where I'm not bothered? Where am I going to sit where there's no like riots or there's, rats? And, have you walked in London recently? And so it's so unwelcoming. And then you walk in Doha or Dubai or Kuwait or Singapore or Hong Kong, and there's absolutely no chaos. There's order. And that is your human rights are respected.
Yes.
No one's going to mug you. No one's going to rape you. No one's going to attack you. No one's going to steal from you. No one's going to, and that sense of security gives you enough space in your mind to relax so you can be innovative. And that's why I think this part of the world is a blessing compared to other parts. And as we build more, as we invest more, it's going to be more and more attractive.
I'm happy that you came back to the region. I also wanted to come back to the region, but I love how your mind goes so far. You mentioned AI, and it's an important topic nowadays. And I want to know, how much of it do you think it's actually driving transformation, and in which sectors? And how much do you think is just hype that's, exceeding reality, let's say?
Well, with every technology, with everything that comes out new, there's a lot of noise, and you have to be able to determine what's actual signal and what's just noise. I think what's clear today is that large language models are definitely game changers in terms of knowledge management. Like what I can produce today used to take me weeks and research with Google, with Word, and with Excel, these tools. And if I look back to pre-Excel and pre-spreadsheet, I don't know how people did work. And if you look even earlier, before the calculator, the big general ledger and stuff, how did people create anything? And so no, advancements in technology do change lives and make you quicker and better and more efficient. As I said, more efficiency means you get things done at a lower cost, quicker. So it's not a trend or a fad, it's a reality. Just look at how much your life personally has changed with GPT.
Everything is much easier now, right?
Okay, now think of GPT on that scale. Think of yourself as a health ministry. Think about all the data we can get in Kuwait and all diabetes and all the obesity that's Kuwait related, not some research done by Eli Lilly in Europe and fat Europeans. No, that eat pork and eat milk and drink wine and things that we don't have here. And so the results don't apply to us. So we're taking medicine that's done on focus groups that are not us. So think about all the stuff that AI will now help you realize with just generate all the data we have. Like imagine the 2 million, 3 million people registered in the Ministry of Health on Sahel, taking all their data and having AI sift through it and come up with patterns that we haven't seen before. And from the analysis, come up with predictive analysis that help us come up with medicine that fixes us specifically and bespoke medication versus this generalized stuff. This is just on the health level. And I think that's just one analogy or one example of where it's going to change our lives dramatically in the next 3 years.
I think it's amazing because you mentioned the UAE, and I know that there, if I'm saying it correctly, the government has paid for everybody to have access to ChatGPT Pro so that everybody becomes more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I heard, that at least at a government level, everybody has access. Mm-hmm. It was funded by their government, is to streamline and start, early adoption. Mm-hmm. But as you know, I write down things because I want the conversation to be more meaningful. And I think what's interesting is to hear there's a much bigger picture, and I want your expertise on it. So according to recent reports, Gulf sovereign wealth funds accounted for roughly 63% of global sovereign-backed AI investments between 2020 and 2025, with more than $20 billion allocated toward AI-related sectors. And it was this year at LEAP where Saudi Arabia announced nearly $15 billion in AI and digital infrastructure commitments in a single event, in partnerships with companies such as NVIDIA and AMD. And I want to ask you if such moves are helping the competitiveness of the region. What do you feel that it's going to be the major consequence of this?
Yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. This is exactly what happens. I mean, if you go back to the 5G adoption, they were the first to realize, let's build the most sophisticated communication superstructure. Mm-hmm. And then, now they're doing it with AI. Mm-hmm. Let's do that. The first to come up with the best infrastructure and superstructure wins. And again, they come up with regulations that help and fix, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE all have their vision and they're moving very quickly with that. Mm-hmm. And, things, for example, let's take NEOM in Saudi. Some of the ideas now that they did their, a revisit, they're like, we want to do capital efficiency. And so some of those projects might not be efficient in the previous 5-year plan, but now we're going to transform them into AI data centers because we built it. And, fortunes favors the prepared. Mm-hmm. And if you're prepared, you can always move. And so they are prepared because they dug the thing, they built the base. Now they have the power plant to operate it. But instead of it being some leisure lifestyle, now they're like, let's make it into an AI center. And so things like that definitely make this part of the world the most competitive. Mm-hmm. And it's the investments that brought people here. That's to my point earlier. Mm-hmm. Like instead of replicating it, invest, come back, build for the region and build added value services that make them come in. It's like Switzerland and the banking in the World War I and II, because they had the most sophisticated banking system for then and the most regulated system for back then. It made everyone feel comfortable putting their cash there. They were protected. Same thing is happening now. It's called data banks. Mm-hmm. When you build these data centers and you have all these countries that cannot build data centers in their countries for many reasons, they store their data with you. And so you become their lifeline.
Yes.
And yes, for example, some country X in Europe or X in Africa, they can't build for many reasons. Regulation, lack of funding, political chaos. But they need their health data on the cloud, but it's sitting on a server somewhere. So it sits here, and it's called data embassies. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's happening in the region. And then when all those billions of people have all their data linked to you, that's a very strong security move. You know, when people can't afford to let bullies throw their garbage fireworks on you, you know, and they will stop it. And globally, they will be, you know, forbidden from attacking you because it will affect everyone's health. And I think it's very smart for security reasons to do that as well. And it's the Gulf is way ahead of everyone.
Fahad, you're somebody who's so knowledgeable. I'm fascinated about this conversation. You do wear multiple hats, both in the private and public sector. That's why I think your advice to future generations is very important.
Thank you.
And I would like us to think together about these future generations that are coming with ICT as a very important sector looking into the future of the region. What would be some advice you would give to the younger generations who aspire to, you know, to have a role in this transformative journey?
You know, it's a good word, transformative, definitely, because I feel bad for the younger generations because the leaps in technology is going to make a lot of basic things that were taken for granted obsolete or gone.
Yes.
You know, whether it's, you know, even jobs like lawyers, doctors, engineers, architects. Those were like things people used to dream about becoming. Now they're like, no, I got my computer to do that. You know, I used to pay $200 an hour to run through the blood work analysis with my doctors. I had a doctor in Europe and a doctor in Thailand. I would just go through the blood work with before I go meet my doctors here in Kuwait, which will cost me $400. Now Claude does that, and Perplexity has a health angle that does that. And it's even better than the doctors because they don't get tired and they're not moody and they're not like jet lagged. You know, it's there.
Yes.
And so I am, for one, and the amount of information I know about my health now, that's quadrupled just since I started using, you know, my the models for that. And so it is transformative. Things are changing at a high pace. What I think also is their advantage, now this is the disadvantage, their advantage is now there's a whole phenomena called vibe coding. And vibe coding means you don't need to learn a coding language. Like you don't need to learn JavaScript or C++ or Python, the new languages that you use today, Assembly, Unity, Django. You don't need any of that. You just need to understand what you want to build and you say it, you know, and you type it like a natural language. And the computer will understand what you want and they build. And so even learning code has become obsolete now. You just need to have logic. And vibe coding is here. And a lot of the young kids now are building using vibe coding software. And those vibe coding companies in 2 years became worth 50 billion. It's huge, like Lovable and Cursor, and even in the models themselves, like in Anthropic and Cloud Code, there's coding agents. And so I think if I was to give advice to parents, send your kids to, you know, coding institutes to teach them the logic, how to code, and then vibe coding, which is once you know the logic, now you know what you encourage them on building. And you're going to have a lot of people building things. And, you know, with 6G coming, now you can download the entire Netflix library in 1 second.
6G.
Yeah. Not one movie
Okay.
in a second. I remember when it will take me 2 days to download one movie, and I thought it was the craziest
I
thing in the
remember
world.
that too.
You know?
I lived through it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was like so happy. I remember when it was, I forgot, it was Star Wars in 1997 maybe or something. And we downloaded it. It was bootlegged and it was online. It was my friend in Germany, and we came and we found a place to download it. And it took us 2 days to download the movie, and we saw it. You know, and we were so happy. It was free and it was online, and we saw the movie. And now you can download the entire Netflix library in 1 second. And that's because of my limited imagination. I think that's a big deal. But if you talk to a 6-year-old today who is smart, I mean, they like, oh, let me think about how does that get me closer to Mars? How does that get me, you know, to build my chalet in the moon? You know what I mean? Or how do I get to live 200 years
But do you think
with
the
my
younger
pets that live 200 years with me. And so I see their concerns. Like one of the companies we invested in is called Loyal. It's about prolonging dogs' lives. And because you cannot do certain tests on humans, they're doing it on dogs. And now they managed to extend the dog's life 5 years. So instead of 12 human years, they can stay 17 human years and ongoing. And then imagine you get them to stay 50 years. And then imagine that technology being allowed on humans. And so now humans have, have anti-aging capabilities that make them live to 150 happy lives with their happy dogs and their happy friends. And, the game changed. It's not about downloading movies or social apps. It's about changing your life. And I think it's coming. People just need to be less complacent and more focused. And as I said, fortune favors the prepared. Fortune favors the prepared. The more prepared you are, the more fortunate you're going to be.
So the younger generation should be more prepared.
They have every tool in the world to make them win. It's just smart parents will push their kids into smart lanes.
Yes.
And traditional complacent parents will probably send their kids to do things that will probably be obsolete. And, like 100 years ago, making sure your kid is a very good horseback rider.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or like, you invest all your money in building the best carriage because you want your kids to go to work. And then the highway came, and how stupid are you? And so that's what's going on now. People are teaching their kids to ride horses and carriages while we're in the information superhighway, the AI superhighway.
Are we more efficient or are we more dependent?
We're so much more efficient. And look, lazy people will be dependent no matter what. Like when the lazy boy and TV came, people just sat down and watched TV. It's because they're lazy. So if you go back to the cavemen, the one that hunted and was bigger is the one that wasn't lazy, and the one that sat around in the cave did nothing probably got eaten. And so it's a human nature. It has nothing to do with technological advancement.
Yes.
It's you. What do you do with your life? Have you become? I work more now because of AI. I can do much more. I produce more, and that encourages me to do more. And I think it's a blessing.
Fahad, I wonder sometimes how much culture interferes in technology transformations. And I want to discuss with you a subject, but I promised myself I will always respect the decision of the interviewee to speak about certain subjects. There's an envelope on the table. I would like you to take it, open it, read what's inside, and decide if you want to share that with our audience today.
Let's see. Surprise.
Yes, if you want to talk about it, if you want to talk about
Sure.
it, you read it out loud.
The website?
I heard from sources that, I'll make the introduction. I heard from sources that you had to learn a tough lesson, tough love. I was amazed because you were somebody who built something incredible and who made an amazing transformation and was about to win the lottery, as they say, but then maybe culture interfered. And I want to know more about this, and I think it could be a great lesson for the younger generations.
All right, well, Ajeeb.com was my first startup, and it was in the late 90s during the .com boom. And so the first tech boom of scale happened in the mid-90s.
How old were you?
I was in college. I was very young. And I was motivated because there were 3 websites that went public, and it was amazing. Everyone was trying to get on them. And there was no way to get online. You needed to go get an internet connection, which is dial-up. You had to put Ethernet, and you somehow got online. You needed a phone, and your phone, people will call you and will disconnect. It was the good old days. And then you needed something called a browser. You needed to go get a CD-ROM, upload it to your laptop, and then open a browser that allows you to browse the internet, right? Mm-hmm. And then you need somewhere to go. Now you have a browser, where to go? So you have to go to a directory that directs you where to go in the internet. And there was something called Yahoo, and it was yahoo.com, and then it was America Online, which put everything in AOL. And I loved all that. I was online all day. The amount of information I was getting, homework for college became such a joke. I didn't even have to go to university, to the library. Everything was online.
Yes.
And I would, just, it wasn't plagiarism, but it was, close. It was just, everything was online. And, I wasn't trying to like produce a thesis that changed the world. I was just answering questions. So I realized how much fun it was. And then, because I was studying finance in Northeastern, I did something called the co-op, and you work with what you did. So I got a job in Wall Street, and I went to Wall Street and I saw Yahoo and Netscape and AOL go public on NASDAQ. And they shot into $100 million companies, and all the founders were my age. And actually one of the founders of Napster, which started peer-to-peer sharing and the whole music downloading streaming business, he was in Northeastern with us, Sean Fanning. And he was just a regular guy. And he created something so amazing. So I thought we need to do something similar. And I moved back to the Middle East. I moved back to Kuwait, and I realized how no one's going to get online. For one, everything online was in English.
Yes.
And we wanted it to be in Arabic. And so one of my father's patents was in machine translation. And I took that technology and I gave it an online, front, and people would just come in and put the URL of what they wanted to see. Let's say, you like reading this magazine or whatever, and you'll put it, and then I will translate it in Arabic for you. And the first thing people said is, wow, or Ajeeb. And so I called it Ajeeb.com.
Okay.
And it was at one point the highest visited website with 21 million views. And I made some money on ads, whatever. It was, forgot, the companies click something. Google, then I think Google bought it or someone. But it was fine. I had an office in Dubai. Dubai had a cute little town called Dubai Internet City. It doesn't exist anymore. Or that building doesn't exist anymore because it became a highway that took you to the Palm. But back then I was there, and it was doing very, very well in terms of traffic, in terms of everything. But the Middle East in general, the GCC in general, was very slow in terms of internet adoption. There was no internet. It was all closed, and they didn't know what to do. So the cost, okay, don't forget, this is the cost of having a server and bandwidth and T1 lines and all that talk was super expensive. So all the money I was investing in infrastructure. Today it's all almost free. And so it's very...
But you got approached. I know you got approached.
Well, what story are you talking about? I'll tell you, no problem. Just ask me, what exactly are you saying?
So I heard about Ajeeb,
Sure.
And I heard it was groundbreaking technology at the time, specifically because of the translation capabilities.
Right.
I heard that you got approached by Yahoo to buy the company. I heard there was a big number, hundreds of millions involved, which I think speaks a lot about your vision and your talent in innovation. But then I heard there was a family decision not to sell. And that's why I mentioned culture. On the one hand, I wonder how that impacted you at the time, because you were on the edge of glory, like they say. But also, if you regret not selling it, or if you are at peace with the decision that was made back then.
I think that there's some truth behind what you heard, but I think it's three stories that kind of overlap.
Okay.
So yeah, I did struggle with the idea of managing Ajeeb as an independent, autonomous website. I was not given the authority I think I deserved for a young innovator.
Yes.
And I was like, I had to have like these older board members and people that were trusted, that were just dead weights and actually were counterproductive because they didn't get what I was saying. And they kept slowing me down to a point where I couldn't handle the interference, and they just didn't get it. And I don't think anyone got it. And they were kept, and then they started adding things, and we veered from what it was into a complete open portal. It had books, had stories. It just lost its we should have just focused on beat machine translation and being number one. And then, Google Translate and Siri and all that came later.
Yes.
And that was the problem. And then in 2007, actually, one of the larger US, Yahoo went and bought Maktub. Okay, so it has nothing to do with me. They went and bought Maktub, which was a Jordanian website. And
I heard that happened after they approached you.
yeah, no, maybe there were talks with Yahoo. We were talking with Microsoft was trying to buy Yahoo, and Yahoo was trying to buy things. They're all gone, and Maktub is gone, Yahoo is gone. They all failed eventually. But what I think killed me, but was life. In 2007, we had a binding agreement to acquire 51% of my company at a total valuation of $210 million in 2007. And so they will buy 51%, which means probably they'll buy $200 million, $100 million, pardon me. And the 100 million was going to mostly come to me. And I think together we'll put 10% as new capital, and I would stay on board for 2 years. And that was great. And then I think towards the end of 2007, there were signs that the world was collapsing. It was the global financial crisis.
Yes.
And the other side was being advised by Lehman Brothers. I was being advised by HSBC and a local group. And Lehman Brothers collapsed and disappeared.
Yes.
And half of the team in HSBC got fired. And I saw the world collapse. And it was, just said to me, like, what if I started 3 months earlier? What if all the what ifs happened? And then I was really upset and depressed that summer. And it was one of the worst summers I remember. And I remember not being able to sleep. It was like 2 months insomnia, maybe.
Yes.
Of just like, what happened? And then watching the world collapse. And then people were killing themselves, literally. People were jumping off buildings in 2008 because their whole career is gone, their whole thing. People shot themselves here. You know what I mean? And so it was sad. So I figured, you know what? I don't care about what happened. I'm just going to move on. And sometimes, everything is a blessing in disguise. You learn, you move, and we learned a lot. So we try not to put ourselves in such situations. And so I figured, if life is so risky, you might as well just go all in on risk, and just focus on risk. And all our bets now are very risky, and enjoy the risk, enjoy the ride. So at least it goes up and down. You were expecting it.
I had one last question. Are you still hoping to be an innovator one day? Are you still hoping to do a groundbreaking step, just like you did back then when you were in your early 20s?
The JEDI is a groundbreaking strategy. It doesn't have to be a tech tool. It can be just a strategy. It can be how you implement it and how you do it. Think about it. I'm in Kuwait, managing, 45 million, which is today, it's over 63 million in value. In Kuwait, remotely, managing all that money via a network of emerging managers, all managed through data analysis using some AI and some data science tools, and being able to invest in great companies. And now we're watching some of them. Some of them are filing to go public. Some of them are being acquired by other public companies. And now, we're very close to a major tectonic shift, like what happened in 2007 and what happened with the move, let's say, to the cloud. The move to AI is really scaring people. And so it's an excellent time to be there and to have, and inshallah, what we built will show fruition in a few years, probably next year. And then people will see this is the most innovative way to invest. And so I'm very happy what we built, and with our courage, our faith, and our patience. And I think these are virtues that have always been in humanity, whether you read the Quran or the Bible. This is what God's message is. Be patient, be faithful, be full of faith, and faithful to your vision, and patient. And nothing happens without courage. And so the courage to be different, to be contrarian, to innovate, is what differentiates the winners from the not so winners.
Yes. Well, for sure, I'm going to keep the JEDI Fund on my radar, and maybe we continue the discussion next year once there's going to be more changes, the ones that you're expecting. In the meantime, I want to thank you so much for the conversation, for being here at the Middle Ground. I hope everybody learned a bit more through this discussion, and I really thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
For everybody who has been watching until the end, thank you so much. As you see, technology, it's about to change everybody's life at every single level. We have technology transformations in every single sector, from our houses, our households, into every business that operates. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, don't forget, meet us in the middle.